Hello, everybody. This is Sophia Mona Lisa of the Rose Will Mystery School and the Golden Ray Center. And today is January 7th, the day before the solar plexus chakra activation by the Venus gate. We know that portal as the portal of personal power. And we are going to be activating our 18th strand of DNA later on today through our Venus gate ceremony. Okay, so here we are. This is the template that I've reminded you on numerous occasions is the template that I received from Yeshua to use as a replacement template for the myth of Inanna in terms of the Venus synodic cycle, and also in place of the hero's journey, in place of the template for the sacred masculine cycle. So here we are tomorrow, January 8th, this solar plexus chakra, the portal of personal power will be activated. And when we activate this chakra, we are being given access to the holy soul aspect of Sophia. We've been through the Trinity of Christ, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And now we're going to be going through the Trinity of Sophia, Holy Soul, Daughter, and Mother. And if you're not sure what these aspects of Sophia are, I can invite you to go back to my YouTube channel and look at my Sacred Feminine classes, because I do talk about each of these aspects in specific classes. So through the Holy Soul aspect of Sophia, we have access to the spiritual realm of Dharma consciousness. And Dharma is a Sanskrit word. It means right conduct. And we experience Dharma consciousness through love in action. So you'll see next month, February, when we descend into the sacral chakra, we will be accessing the daughter aspect of Sophia. So here we go. This month's gate activation at the solar plexus is happening in Sagittarius, and it's happening at 12 degrees of Sagittarius. And because the gate activation is tomorrow, I will be sharing with you the constellation and the star related to this timing. But first, let me show you the chart for that activation. You can see here, it's very intricate, very, very intricate. Right here, we've got the Venus gate activation, the moon and Venus together at 12 degrees, 6 minutes in Sagittarius. And they are closely conjuncting Yeshua, our inner Christ. He's at 15 degrees, 50 minutes. So, you know, we round that up to 16 degrees, but this is definitely less than a 4-degree orb here. So pretty closely conjunct. Notice also, and I'll speak to this again later on, that they are in the 7th house of relationship. So this activation, of course, is creating a whole new relationship between you and your seat of personal power, and something just a little bit more that, as I said, I'll mention to you later. Now, the star that is informing this gate activation is right here. It's Vega. And look at how Vega and Yeshua, our inner Christ, are very closely in that semi-sextile, that 30-degree aspect of the sacred helpmate, which is a much more intimate relationship than the 60-degree aspect, the sextile that we see here between Vega and the Magdalene. That's more like the BFF that's got your back. So it's interesting that this star has a very, very close sacred helpmate relationship with Yeshua, our inner Christ. Notice that the star is in the 9th house. So through all of these aspects, which I will go over in just a second, all of the frequencies coming in from Vega are teaching us something. There is some spiritual knowledge that we are receiving through the light frequencies of Vega. And again, I'll go into that a little bit deeper. So what we see, first of all, the really easy stuff is that the gate activation is making a square. Remember what I say about squares, the breakthrough in consciousness to the Magdalene in Pisces. Magdalene's journey through Pisces, Magdalene is our inner Sophia, our inner divine wisdom. And so we are really receiving that divine wisdom through our inner Magdalene straight from source. This is very, very powerful. And now we see that the gate activation is trining Chiron in Aries. And the shamanic medicine of Chiron in Aries is all about self-love. And we've been talking about this whole new eclipse series on the Libra-Aries axis, Aries-Libra axis, the path of conscious equal partnership. And one of those first steps that we take onto that pathway is we've got to be able to be in conscious equal partnership with ourselves. And the only way we can do that, first and foremost, is if we can love ourselves. And that means all of ourselves. That means all of our illuminated self. That means all of our shadow aspects. We love ourselves as a fractal of source. And so that's really significant that this is a path of most allowance in terms of being able to create this. Well, dare I go ahead and say it, because I'm always giving these spoiler alerts, not only our own personal seat of power, but of course our inner Christ. And then we see something here that I normally don't speak to. It's an aspect that takes us a little deeper. It's the inconjunct, because you see, Sagittarius is not across the sky from Taurus. It's across the sky from Gemini. And Taurus is not across the sky from Sagittarius. It's across the sky from Scorpio. So you take that opposition and you move back one house. And so now instead of 180 degrees, you have 150 degrees. And this inconjunct is an interesting space because it's creating a lot of tension in this 3D reality that is based on duality. The duality of either I can do this or I can do that, or I can be this or I can be that. And really what this inconjunct is inviting you to do is to expand yourself, expand your space, expand into your multidimensional self so that you have enough inner space to do this and do that, to be this and be that. And so what we're going to discover here when I bring us to the slide on the horse wisdom related to Epona in Taurus is that this relationship with our seat of personal power is really going to be dependent on our ability to embody this horse wisdom. And as I said, I'll get to that in just a moment. But before we do so, let me show you a couple other things. There's two other squares, another square and another trine that I want to bring into your awareness. Chiron here is making a square to the star Vega. So all kinds of breakthroughs in consciousness are going to happen here to support you in being able to shift more into that frequency of self-love. Now, the other thing that I didn't speak to, which this is a good place to speak to it, is that if you look closely, this Chiron in Aries is in the 12th house. And so we also have to acknowledge the shamanic medicine of the 12th house. And it's such a beautiful placement because of the fact that we are also, through the gate activation, creating a more powerful personal relationship with our inner Christ. And the shamanic medicine here is about being in the world, but not of the world, so that you can travel as the shamans do back and forth between the reality of this material world and what some would call the spiritual world, or maybe the higher density worlds, 5th density, 6th density, 11th, 12th density. We're activating the 18th strand of DNA that attunes to the 18th density. It's an extremely high frequency. So not only do we have that square that's going to give us that breakthrough in consciousness around being able to utilize that medicine of being in the world, but not of the world, we also have a trine, another path of most allowance from Epona and her horse wisdom over here to Vega, our star. So there is a lot going on. And I'll tell you quite frankly what all of this mishmash kind of reminds me of. Reminds me of when I was a child and we'd have these strings that we would hold on our pinkies and our thumbs, and we do all this fancy stuff, and somehow we would twist our hands and it would come out and it looked like a ladder. I think we called it Jacob's ladder. And I don't know if any of you have played that little string game as a child, but that's what this kind of reminds me of in a very innocent kind of a way, because obviously with the angles of these aspects, it's not a perfect ladder, but you can kind of get the sense of a ladder. So I'm going to stop the share here and invite the tribe to make any comments around anything that's coming up around what they're seeing in the sky with those aspects, anything that struck them. Nicole, anything that you're tapping into that is really important for us to drill down on related to all of that. So please unmute yourselves and speak up.
I really feel this strongly that we're moving into a detachment of the world, and not in a non-healthy way, but it's more of being able to be free to know that it's not this or that, it's this and that. It's whatever you want it to be. And living free in that energy is being able to really not have attachment to outcomes and live in the moment and keep going. However it turns out is exactly the way it was supposed to, and not to take the world personally, and moving into this place where I am always okay. No matter what's happening around me currently, I know that I am secure in my field, in my energy, and I have no attachment to an outcome, which leads to bigger and advanced growth in life. And that's really this this solar plexus energy is really bringing that power in for you to find that sovereignty within yourself and know that you're okay no matter what's happening. That's really what I'm getting from this energy in this new transit.
And that is a beautiful, beautiful explanation of those frequencies, because we know with Vega in the 9th house around spiritual teachings, a lot of the ancient spiritual teachings, whether they're the Toltec teachings, whether they're the Hindu teachings, speak to becoming the observer, detaching from the outcome. Absolutely. Karen, there was something you wanted to share.
Yeah, as you were speaking, Nicole, the word untethered came to my mind. And it's almost like we're baby birds and we're being kicked out of the nest and it's time to fly on our own, one way or the other. So
Yeah.
that was the imagery.
Yeah,
That's very good.
Yeah.
I like that.
And I love what Nicole said about bringing it back to this solar plexus, because I was doing a reading with a client recently, and she was talking about, some of the choices that she makes in relationships that don't serve her. And she's conscious of that. And she is resistant to letting them go because she feels like she needs someone in her corner. And so that's why she doesn't let go of the relationship. And of course, we talked about coming into our sovereignty, because what's in our Christ heart, our sacred flame, our connection to source, our inner Christos Sophia, they're in our corner. And so the way that you spoke to that in terms of the solar plexus, I love that, because it's an ability to bring that energy down and really embody it and know that you are your own source of power. You don't need anyone in your corner because you're so powerful. You're sovereign in your power.
I think that's what we're moving into now, is really recognizing that we have our own power. We have our own backs. Everyone else is not necessary for you to feel safe and secure and to live your truth. When you're living your truth, you know that you're safe, you're secure, and you're in your power. And it's a beautiful new energy that we're moving into tomorrow.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I will tell you, I've shared this with Karen. I've already had a complete initiation around that very thing. And I'm kind of, again, getting ahead of myself, but the day after this gate activation tomorrow, the sacred masculine is rising from the underworld, completely transfigured and reborn. And so, I already said that this whole 2024 is about this return of the divine masculine. We've seen here this new relationship with our inner Christ that is being activated through this gate activation. And what I experienced in this initiation that happened over the past 48 years, because the sacred masculine is rising in Capricorn. So that archetype is your elder, right? Your wise, your inner wise man, your inner elder. And I learned how my inner wise man, my inner elder, could protect and take care of my inner child through me, by me choosing to stand in my truth and stand in my power. It enabled my inner elder to take care of and protect my inner child through this dynamic in a way that I've never before in this lifetime, and probably not in many, many lifetimes, have experienced.
That's beautiful. I think we're moving away from the masculine energy of needing to do and fix. And the masculine energy feels like it's more coming in to be a supportive role for the uplifting of that female energy that's been suppressed for so long. And that's exactly what it feels like we're moving into.
And you're right on, because Maureen can attest to this. How many times and for how long have I said the sacred masculine's role is to serve and support the sacred feminine? And I know that that probably sounds sacrilegious way back when I started sharing that. But now we can see that the consciousness is prepared to accept and understand that creative role for the divine masculine.
Yeah.
Kimberly, Maureen, do either of you have anything you'd like to share around what you noticed with this activation? You're both muted, so if you want to share, you need to unmute.
The only thing that came up for me is really about creating a whole new relationship between ourselves and our personal seat of power. But Nicole spoke beautifully to that. And, other than acknowledging that, I don't have anything else. Thank you, though.
Yeah, I love how Nicole's words and her language just give such a deeper clarity around what I'm trying to translate from these charts and these aspects. Are you good, Maureen, or is there anything you'd like to share? Okay. All right. I'm going to go back to the slides now. And now we're going to look at this Epona in Taurus medicine. And this is probably going to seem like an interesting or kind of a, what is the, not really interesting, what is the word? Like a paradox for this Taurian horse wisdom, because it's called out of body wisdom, when we know that Taurus is all about getting grounded and being embodied. But really, this is actually the perfect medicine for these Taurus energies, because think about this idea of transcendence. And of course, we experience more transcendent states of mind and being when we are deeply grounded within ourselves. And dissociation, which happens when you leave your body. And so through dissociation, this often happens when we're in that fear-based place of fight, flight, freeze, where we're kind of like in this survival mode. But when we can bring our awareness back to our breath, coming back into our body, and not float above these uncomfortable situations, that is completely how we step out of our power. They're very disempowering. And we can come into our bodies fully, and now we can expand into these transcendent places of awareness. This is where and how we can thrive. And what I love about this idea of thriving in this way is because this state of transcendence allows us to access innovative states of mind. And so, you know, we can get this really higher perspective, which goes back even to what Nicole was saying about, what is the word that she used, about letting go of the attachment to what's happening in your external world. If you can let go of that attachment and go into this more transcendent space, you get all kinds of higher perspectives that allow you to have clarity around what's happening, allow you to inspire from a more empowered place in terms of how to handle, negotiate, navigate that external reality. So this is a really powerful horse wisdom. And I know I've said it before, but it's worth saying here. The slides that I do from Linda Kohenov, Way of the Horse Oracle, they're just barely scratching the surface of the medicine around this wisdom that she puts in that book. So if any of you have that book, I invite you to go read the 3 or 4 pages of information that she provides in the book on this Taurus horse wisdom, because it's going to be really significant for you to understand the fullness of it. And let me go back here to the chart. Hold on a second, my mouth isn't working. Just a second. There we go. Remember, this gate activation is happening tomorrow, January 8th. That's my birthday. I get a whole new solar return chart for the entire coming year. This medicine of Epona in Taurus is going to be guiding me. And of course, Maureen's birthday is the very next day. So she's also going to be having this Epona horse wisdom related to Taurus, guiding her over the next pathway. And any of you out there that are having birthdays close to ours, and of course you can see she is at 14 degrees. And so, you know, before us and after us, but right around us, your solar return charts are going to have this Epona in Taurus wisdom encoded in your ascension path for the next year too. So you'll definitely want to understand what that is all about. Okay, so let's look at the constellation that's informing this Venus gate activation. As I mentioned earlier to the tribe off screen, this constellation is called the Lyre of Orpheus, also known as Lyra the harp. Okay, and here there's Vega, but I'm going to show you another picture on the next slide where Vega is in the constellation. So Orpheus is a musician. This was his musical instrument, the harp. And he is another one of the ancient heroes that was brought up by Chiron. We've spoken about several of them already in some of the other ancient constellations that we've experienced activation in. Now, Orpheus, in terms of his myth, went with his childhood friend and comrade, Jason, to find the golden fleece. And of course, for those of you who don't know who Jason is, it's Jason from the myth of Jason and the Argonauts. They went to get the golden fleece. When they did that, Orpheus was able to save the ship's crew from the singing sirens with the music of his lyre. Now, his wife was a nymph, and I looked this up on the internet, and I practiced it, and I practiced. And let me see if I can get it right. Eurydice is, I believe, how the English pronunciation of this Greek name. No, the accent is on the Y. Eurydice. I can't remember. Anyhow, that's his wife. Soon after they were married, she got bit by a serpent and was killed. And so Orpheus went into the underworld thinking, I'm going to play my musical harp here to the king and the queen of the underworld. And maybe, actually this should say her, this is a typo, they would let his wife live once more. But they made a condition. They said in order for her to return to the world of the living, that Orpheus could not look back to see if she was following him. However, his faith was not strong enough, and he did turn back. And when he turned back, he saw her fade into the land of shades. That's an expression for the underworld, forevermore. Now, after Orpheus died, his head actually uttered oracles. So that's an interesting thing to know about him. But this is the big piece here, down here. We're going to get into the meat of it. Because of Orpheus's descent into the underworld, he has often been compared to Christ. Now, we know in the Christian faith that they use the terms Christ, Jesus, Christ, Yeshua. What is the word that you call that? Can't find the word. You know, they use them interchangeably. So, and we know that Yeshua did go into the underworld. So there's often a comparison made between the two. Now, what's interesting that I like in terms of maybe supporting that comparison is that Orpheus is known as the father of mysticism. And, you know, there's the Christian faith, and then for many of the major world religions, Judaism, Islam, there's then the esoteric faith. And so the esoteric side of Christianity has to do with the Gnostics. The Essene community was known to be a community that worked with the esoteric teachings. And so the fact that he's known as a father of mysticism intrigues me, because it tells us that there is a link between Orpheus and these esoteric spiritual teachings. So that's interesting. The other thing that's interesting is that the lyre is a symbol of the link between heaven and earth. And while this constellation influences me because I was born under it, I wasn't aware of this link. And all those years ago, when I created the Golden Ray Center, in my tagline, I said, bringing heaven to earth. So it's fascinating to me that this influence of what this symbol of the lyre represents was even showing up in my work at that time through the tagline. So let's look at Vega, the star Vega. So here's the constellation. It looks kind of, because it's on its side, it looks kind of like a long diamond shape with this little piece that comes up here and then a little piece that comes over here. There's where Vega is located. Vega is located in the Lyre constellation. And now what's fascinating is I found this piece and I had to just bring it in. It turns out, and I've never heard of it before, maybe you have. It turns out that there's this configuration that you can see in the summer sky, generally around May or June, definitely by July, and then through the rest of the year. You can see this configuration, which is known as the summer triangle. And Kimberly, this is especially significant for you because this summer triangle involves 3 stars from 3 different constellations. Of course, we've got Vega from Lyra. We've got Deneb, Maureen, this is going to be relevant to you, from Cygnus. And then, Kimberly, we have Altair from, I don't know if you pronounce that Aquila or Akia. So these 3 stars make up this summer triangle that you can find in the summer sky. And so not only is Vega the brightest star of its own constellation, Lyra, Vega is also the brightest of these 3 stars in the summer triangle. Now, in ancient India, Vega is believed to be the star whose influence helped the gods vanquish evil. Well, that's a good omen, isn't it? Especially considering the times that we're in currently. But this is where we really get into the meat of it, the exciting part of it. The light frequencies from Vega give people an awareness of the essence of interconnectivity. This should say from, sorry for that typo, a common source. And this essence of interconnectivity from a common source is the basis from which music comes forth. And I'm not a musician that has music come through me. We know about Maria Hartsong, of course, and the fact that she can receive music that our soul is calling forth speaks to that interconnectivity. Other musicians, whether they're classical composers like Mozart, Bach, Beethoven, they talk about this muse that they can hear this music and they're able to bring it through. So I love that piece, speaking to the interconnectivity of all things. Now, the awareness of the vibrational characteristics of your own soul comes forth from this common bond that we share. This is why we are able to discern that, Nicole's soul is not my soul and Kimberly's soul is not Nicole's soul, because we're aware of the differences in the vibrations of our souls because of this interconnectivity. The energy of Vega relates not only to music, but to vibration, soul interconnection, bonding at deeper levels. This is fascinating to me because anything like this, music, vibrations, frequencies, this is all very much the air element. And I spoke to a client recently who has a grand air trine in her natal chart. And so she would be very much able to attune to this energy of Vega, to tap into this type of bonding and soul interconnection. And so Vega does attune us to these principles. And as I said, people that have strong air energies in their chart, whether their sun or moon is in an air sign, whether their air signs on their ascendant, whatever the aspects are, they're going to be able to connect very easily with Vega and its energies. I love this, the soul note. I've never heard this before because I was speaking to the tribe earlier and I was telling them about this question that had been posed in the launch of the Lighthouse song. What is your music? What is your song? Well, duh. If we have a soul note, then of course we have our own music, our own song that can come forward from our soul note. And I love that our soul note is an essential vibration associated with our soul family and the roots of our soul family in relationship to the greater whole of humanity. So just as I said, people that have strong air influences in their charts can easily tap into Vega. Anyone can tap into Vega. You can meditate on Vega and attune to your own soul note. I absolutely love that. So not only can Vega create a deeper attunement to your soul note, it can create a deeper attunement to your soul purpose, your soul vibration, and even a deeper connection with your own soul. And this connection, this attunement happens through what we call a universal language. It's kind of an interdimensional way of communicating. And so universal language is based on expressive principles of universal connection and awareness that transcends cross-cultural boundaries as we have here on our planet, as well as off-planet boundaries, as well as intergalactic, interstellar, and interdimensional boundaries. And honest to goodness, I really think that those in the tribe that have been doing their sacred work and receiving spiritual guidance, I've never heard it called universal language. And it feels to me like the way I know I receive my communications, that it's very likely this kind of universal language that is transcending all of these boundaries that we create, especially in our minds. But, you know, in those Piscean energies of the universal source field, one thing that Neptune and Pisces is known for, and oftentimes in the shadow, although we can see here it's not a shadow expression, is not having those boundaries, being able to merge into those other frequencies. And then we have here that the language of music, this is spectacular, can connect 3D concepts, 4D interconnection, 5D time displacement. And I know I personally, and some of those in the tribe have also been experiencing this 5D time displacement, and the 6D ability to create. I love this. This is how those musicians are able, through the quote unquote muse, able to receive from that higher frequency, 6D and above, that music through the universal language to be able to bring it here into 3D for us to enjoy. And then the final thing about Vega as a star is that as you choose to work with Vega, and you do so over long periods of time, you will find a deeper sensitivity to your own multi-dimensional facets, to the multi-dimensional facets of your own existence. And it will help you be able to communicate with people in an easier way. So I'm going to stop the share here and allow the tribe to comment, share any ahas on the Lyre of Orpheus constellation and Vega, the star in particular. Nicole, what's coming up for you important around the frequencies of Vega?
I want to start by going back a step and talking about the dissociation issue.
Okay.
Because if you're dissociated with yourself and not embodied in your energy, you cannot receive these frequencies.
Right.
And why do we dissociate? It is a mind protective mechanism that we've created for ourselves, that when something doesn't feel safe, when something feels dangerous, when we are not okay with the experience we're having, we dissociate because there's pain involved, because there's uncomfortableness, because of these issues that we have with an energy, we dissociate. So if you can keep yourself from dissociating, and no matter how uncomfortable it may be in your body, if you stay present in that energy, let it express and release through you without dissociating, you have now embodied and become a stronger person. With Vega, it's so funny because this is how I do my work. Every soul, every animal, every plant has their own frequency to me. And that is how I tune into people's energies. And when I tune into your energy, I feel the disharmony in a note, right? It draws my attention because it's vibrating out of harmony with the rest of your song, if I could put it that way. And so when we do this healing work, what we're doing is grabbing that piece and letting it express its will until it reharmonizes with the rest of your energy, and you come back into a harmony, into a state of being, right? You are now vibrating and singing your song clearly. And when you have these blockages, when you have these things inside of you, keeping you in a state of dissociation or disharmony, that keeps you from being present. And anything that pokes that wound really creates a reaction, and then you're judging the reaction, right? So with Vega, it's astounding because I invite everybody to sit and be present in their heart space, clear their mind, and call that energy of Vega in. Because with Vega, as you were talking, I called it into myself. And really what that shows you is, where's my disharmony? Or tuning into the outside world, talking to somebody else, you can really feel what's going on with that other person, and you're having a conscious interaction with that person at that point. You are present, and you are creating a space where you guys can evenly exchange information on an energetic level that maybe you haven't experienced before. So I invite you all at some point to do that and call that energy in and sit with that for yourself. Everybody's going to experience this differently because we all have a different perspective. We all have a different energetic field and we all translate things differently. That's why Sophia and I can say the same thing, but we word it very differently, right? And so with Vega, in this air, in this vibration, with this music, everything in the world has an energetic note. If you notice when you walk into a crowd and you know somebody and you look up and you can almost zero in on the person that you know, it's because that note is familiar to you, right? People that you meet that maybe you've experienced in past lives, or you've been doing this together for so long, you meet each other and it's familiar. There is that familiar note that you're tuning into, that you don't know that person on this plane, but there's that familiarness because you guys have done this so many times together and you've had this experience. And so I really invite everybody to just take the time to sit in meditation, open up to Vega, and ask for that wisdom and that knowledge of interpreting the language of energy. And it comes through differently for everyone. Don't judge the way it comes through for you, but really try to embody that, because that gives you another source of power to know without needing to ask somebody if they're okay. You can vibrationally feel, oh, that person's having a hard time. Maybe I could say something nice to them, ask them how they're doing, brighten their day, give them a smile, and continue on your way. You don't have to get involved in other people's stuff, but it's nice to influence people in a positive way when you interact. And I think that's what these energies are alluding to. Being in your power means you're spreading your light to everyone, and you don't have to take anybody's disharmony into you, but you can give the gift of your harmony to others. And that's what Vega speaks to for me.
That's incredible. Yes. Yes. Go ahead, Karen.
Nicole, can you repeat? You said ask Vega for knowledge to what?
Share its vibrational wisdom with you. Just take a deep breath in meditation, sit in your heart space, clear your mind, and Vega will provide that vibrational knowledge. What it does is, for me anyway, as it came in, it really gives you an understanding on translating the energy into a knowledge base. It's part of that air element, bringing that into yourself and finding your own words for translating the energies around you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you that have this book that Maureen clued me into, which I'm so grateful for, it's called Starlight Elixirs and Cosmic Vibrational Healing by Michael Smolkis and Fred Rubenfeld. If you go to the pages on Vega, interestingly enough, they offer in this book, which I have not seen for any other star that we've worked with, they offer a meditation with Vega in here. So if you feel like you need a little bit more support connecting with Vega and doing what Nicole's inviting you to do, and you have this book, you could use that meditation with Vega as a support system.
That's incredible. I was invited by Vega to ask everybody to meditate and bring that energy in, and knowing that that has a support system there, that's fascinating. I love it.
Isn't it beautiful? And this is what I was receiving around what you were saying. And it's just another analogy for some people out there that may hear this that they can connect to. We all know in the spiritual sense that they use the analogy that you are an instrument for source, that your physical body is an instrument for source. And so if you take that analogy further, you could even imagine that your body is like a piano, and a piano has to be continually tuned. And when the piano is getting tuned and they're clicking on one key and then they're pressing on another key, not all of the keys are out of tune. Some are out of tune this time, some are out of tune the next time. And they use these tuning forks to tune the keys. And so what I was receiving is that Vega is the tuning fork for you to bring your instrument back into this harmonious attunement. And I'll tell you why I love this. You know, in the 3D world, we get so locked into it's a spiritual lesson, it's a karmic lesson, it's a soul lesson, it's a wound that has to be healed. And I really think that we are coming out of those as analogies. They're very low vibration. And so if you think about your instrument, it doesn't need to be healed, it just needs to be tuned because it's gotten out of tune. That's so much for me, so much more empowering than, oh God, this is something else I have to heal.
Mm-hmm. And just be aware that it's your mind or ego self that gets you out of tune. When you're having a negative thought or a judgment or something that you're thinking can create disharmony within yourself that, oh man, that hurts. What do I need? What was I thinking? What was I just judging? And as you sit with that, you bring yourself back into your musical space, your flow, your attunement. I love that. That's beautiful.
I love it too. And, you know, when you're speaking to the air element and the astrological signs that are air element signs, you've got Gemini, you've got Libra, you've got Aquarius. Gemini, the lowest frequency of the 3 air signs, is the lower mind. So of course it makes sense that if you're getting out of attunement, it's because something's happening there in the lower mind, or maybe, you know, even in terms of your chart, what's going on in your Gemini frequencies in your chart that's bringing you out of balance.
Yep.
Out of harmony, out of attunement.
Out of harmony. Yeah.
Excellent. Kimberly, Maureen, anything you'd like to add to the conversation?
I had a couple of things because going back to Epona, what was coming up for me is really honing our awareness around the discernment. Am I gaining a higher perspective, or am I actually disconnecting? To not automatically, I think, you know, speaking personally, because Epona is important in my chart. Oh, I'm taking this higher aspect, and I've been able to look back and, oof, no, it was a place of disconnection, disassociation. And so I just think it was important to mention around honing the awareness and to not just automatically assume that you're doing one or the other. I actually loved that share around Epona.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Kimberly, because getting back to what Nicole said, think about this.
Mhm.
If you're triggered, right, that's the word they use, and
Yeah.
dissociate. Now, all of a sudden, you're getting all these beliefs around these perceptions created from this disempowered space of being dissociated. And you believe them. That's the way it was. That's the way it is. That's the way it will always be. And so, even discerning is a belief that I received when I was disempowered, dissociated, or is it a belief that I received, or even wisdom, not a belief, but wisdom that I received from a transcendent state? So you are absolutely right on in terms of this discernment. And I would even venture to say, you know, to take it a step further, that discernment is the part of an integral part of the attunement process.
Yeah, I agree. I love that. Something that came up for me around Vega too was the soul family piece.
being another place that, like, if we feel alone, or like if we feel no one has our back, attuning to Vega can help support that piece as well. Not feeling alone, feeling like someone has your back because you're connecting to your soul family.
Yeah. Very valid and important point. Thank you for sharing that. Hey, Maureen, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah. When it comes to disassociation, I was so happy to see that slide because I do it all the time. I am now at least aware of what it feels like when I'm doing it. That's a big step for me. I've done it since I was a child. And I've noticed that through, you know, I've always been a person who believes that your home should be a sanctuary, a place where you can check your armor at the door. You can feel safe, secure, and loved. Well, I don't have any of that. My home is a very challenging place for me to live. And I have been having some struggles with that. So I am very happy that to have Vega come into my life and to have that wisdom to help me, become more embodied, because I'm doing it right now. I'm trying to get away, and I can feel it, and I'm going, no, breathe, come back. But I don't want to be here. For some reason, I don't want to face this stuff, and I'm very aware of that. I called out. I told. I think I told, it was Karen or you. I sent out an SOS yesterday. I was really in a bad shape. So I called in Saint Germain, Archangel Michael, and Archangel Raphael. And I felt better today, but now I'm doing it again. And so I also wanted to bring up this book. This is so strange because I think it was Karen. Didn't you say something about untethered? What was your comment on that? Do you remember?
Well, I just said when Nicole was giving her explanation, the word untethered came to my mind.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to share with you this book.
That's one of my favorites.
Can't see it.
Is that right? You know who bought me this? It's called The Untethered Soul. You see the horse?
Oh, yeah.
Running on the
By
beach?
Michael Singer.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a great book.
You know who bought me this? My husband.
Mm.
I don't get it. I mean, it's like, is that gaslighting? What is that? Is it on some level he's acknowledging me? Or I don't know. But anyway, I just wanted to say I'm very, very grateful for the slide on disassociation, and also on the information about Vega. Gives me a hold, and somebody's got your back, like Kimberly said. I sometimes feel like nobody's got my back. I'm just a sitting duck. And so anyway, that's what I want to share. And you can see I'm a little more vivacious right now. So I know that I'm struggling. I'm keeping in. I'm here. If I was a deadpan, nothing emotional coming out, you'd know I was not here. And so I'm so grateful for all of you for the things you've brought up, and I know going forward it's going to help me a great deal. Thank you.
I'm so excited for you that you've got this force wisdom of the out of body wisdom on your ascension path this year to work with, to help you stay grounded within yourself. Because I know, at least since I've known you since 2019, and I know from what you've shared even before then, this has been a chronic issue for you.
Mm.
So the fact that this horse wisdom is now coming forward to support you, I'm very excited about
I
that.
am too. I am too. Thank you.
Yeah. And remember, it's making that trine to our star, Vega, the
Vega.
path of most allowance.
Yeah.
So Vega's gonna, it's always had your back, and now it's in your awareness. And the more you stay connected, consciously connected with Vega, that's going to be the path of most allowance for you to use this horse wisdom.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Around that, Nicole, that's really significant coming up that Maureen should be hearing right now.
I'm actually going to connect with her and help ground her in, just
Oh,
because
thank you.
you're in a fight or flight kind of situation right now. I mean, my whole body is internally shaking with the energy that you have going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ground you in while we work through the rest of these slides. And then when we get to the end, I'm going to work with you some more on this. But I think the realization that you know what you're doing is huge, huge. And so I'm just going to stay with her on this.
Great. And of course, this goes back to what
Thank you.
Kimberly said about discernment. It's, you know, that discernment ability that you've honed has been able to help you have this huge awareness heightening. It's fantastic. I'm very excited for you. Thank you, Nicole, for working on that with her. All right,
Yes,
let's go.
thank you so much.
You're welcome, honey. Let me go back to the slides. Okay, so here we are then. What is this whole gate activation about? And of course, this is just an umbrella. You can see that there's lots of intricacies involved with all of the different aspects, but essentially, this gate activation, because remember, we're on the descent journey. This is the process of the descent journey. Clearing out this, I don't know what my, see, this is the thing between the densities. 3 typos I've found now. I rarely make typos, but this is the thing about being in these other densities. Clearing out anything and everything that is keeping you from making a deeper connection with your inner Christ. Your seat of personal power is grounded in your relationship with your divine flame, that inner flame. I'm always talking about igniting the sacred flame, that sacred flame that is your inner Christo Sophia. So that's what this, in a nutshell, this gate activation is all about. All right, Maureen, you're on tap now. She's going to dive into these the slides that she's created for the alchemical process. And before I hand it over to her, I just want to remind you that in the 7 steps, we've worked our way down now to the fermentation step. It is the fermentation step that we are engaging here at the crown chakra. And now the 3rd eye is going into the conjunction step. The throat chakra is going into separation. The heart chakra is going into dissolution. And this solar plexus is starting at that very first step, calcination. So just to go backwards, solar plexus is at the first step. Heart chakra is at the 2nd step. Throat chakra is at the 3rd step. 3rd eye at the 4th step. And the crown chakra is now here at this fermentation 5th step. So take it away, Maureen.
Okay. Oh, feel a little better. Thank you, Nicole. Okay, step 5, fermentation. It's a 2-step process, and it is a doozy, let me tell you. It is so synchronistic that this step comes at the solar plexus gate. It is really amazing how alchemy is fitting in with our Venus journey. I am just so in awe of that synchronicity. So the first step in fermentation is decomposition or putrefaction. Now that is a really big word for us to think about. Putrefaction, you think of something very ew, you know, it's not something that you particularly think that you want in your life when you come across it in nature. And alchemy is totally based and works with nature. You come across putrefaction in nature and it's not pleasant. It's very, very difficult. So the insect that represents this particular phase is the dung beetle. And I prefer to call it the scarab because that is a very sacred symbol. And I learned this from the Egyptians. Yeah, they use the scarab very sacred within very sacred ceremony. It's become a symbol of life, death, and rebirth. It's in all the tombs. There will be something related to the scarab. They are buried. Scarabs are wrapped in their mummy cloths. It's very significant. And in nature, the thing that can maybe help you relate to putrefaction clearly is that the caterpillar melts into the cocoon or the chrysalis from which the final product, the butterfly, will emerge. And it's amazing to me. I was reading about the caterpillar. Its body almost completely liquefies, almost completely. It takes so much energy for this transformation. So we have to go through the putrefaction stage before we can get to the fermentation stage. So I expect that your burning bowl will be full at the end of this month as we have looked at the challenges facing our personal power. We all have them. And I expect there will be new things that will come up. And then with this Vega energy is going to support us through this. This is a very, very black time. And I know that we were talking about the Negredo. Well, we still are going to be experiencing the blackness until we get past it to the fermentation where it turns yellow. And I think that's where it changes, Sophia Mona Lisa, to the next step as far as your graphs show. I know that there's a stage that was left out so that there's only 3. I'm not sure where the yellow stage comes in on the graph, but in alchemy, it's fermentation, the second step, not the first. So we have made an agreement during conjunction that we will participate in the putrefaction. We have been holding conflicting ideas within our heart space without trying to solve them, without trying to fix them, just offering hospitality, because these conflicting ideas have been through the purification of fire, the purification of water, the separating out of things that we want. So these are things that will follow with us and that we want them to be with us. So during conjunction, we have held them with hospitality and love. But now we're going to surrender to the deep retrospection of cocooning. I love that word. I always have, cocooning. It's a very, very cozy word, and I like it better than putrefaction. But within the cocoon, all 4 elements are at work. And that makes it more powerful than anything it looks like. It is an extremely powerful natural event that shows us exactly what this step in alchemy is all about. It is the element of fire, and this is the second time we've had fire as the element of the step. But this time it's not like the first time in calcination, which is a very, very upheaval and an emotional, it's a difficult time to apply calcination to. But this time it's more of a warmth. You know, have you had a pile of grass and you've watched it break down and how it's warm? And, you know, there's all sorts of little bugs in there enjoying that warmth and getting their sustenance from it. It is that kind of feeling, not the harshness of the first time we used fire. And it comes from the union of inspiration and imagination from above. We now have the lower chakras. Those are the ones we are going to be working with, and they are going to be going through the process now. And the heart is still waiting patiently for these chakras to be purified. The heart is still developing compassion. Each time you visit the heart space, your compassion for things will deepen. And our ability in 2024 are ripples. Remember during conjunction, I showed you the skipping the rock as an example. Well, every time that rock lands on the surface, ripples go out. And so during this year, we are going to be touching more and more of the collective consciousness. I think that's a really important part to know, that while you're working on yourself, you are also sending out the energies of all of this work we're doing in alchemy to the collective conscious. And I think we're going to see some more waking up to the truth in our world. And this will definitely make that easier to do, because it's going to be a pretty rude awakening for people who are not attuned to it and fear it. Okay, the state of consciousness I'm talking about is called the secret fire. That's what the alchemists call it. It's internal. We open to higher realms and engage with the reality of transpersonal forces, forces that are above and beyond the limits of personal identity. This may be the very first time where the above reflects the below, and the below reflects the above. They come together. That, you know, that illustration of Maria Prophetessa, as she's showing how the above is pouring down into the middle and the below is also. This is actually the first step where the above and the below are working in a permanent way together. And that makes it very, very transpersonal. And so I laughed at this little witch, you know, in the corner down here, this illustration of I'm melting. You remember in Wizard of Oz how the witch, it was water, not fire, but she was melting and melting and melting down, and she says all my beautiful wickedness is gone, and I love that idea so much. I added it to the illustrations here. Is that I always think, you know, the witch, she's melting away, and evil is melting away, and what we don't want is melting away. And when we emerge, we will be reborn as something new and something different. That's alchemy. That's what that is all about. Okay. Okay. And this stage is heavily influenced by the love and strength of the Christo Sophia consciousness. I just love that because we work with that so much in our studies. And that comes in so strongly at this step because, as I said, it's the first time the above and the below are working together. This is why the intermarriage gains a more substantive union during this time. The alchemist, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, so I'll just stumble through it. Jesuit Teilhard de Chardin. He was received an official warning from the church for his ideas. And he wrote, "Someday we shall harness for God the energies of love. And then for the second time in history of the world, man will discover fire. And this is the fire of fermentation." And it's very powerful. So I think when you go through putrefaction and move into the yellow of fermentation, there's going to be, you'll see a very big change within. And fire will become contained, more gentle. It will be comforting. And so within the great work, this step, it's the first time Hermes appears within the emerald tablet. And this step, it's experience, and that makes this experience very intense illumination. The symbol is the yellow bird and the golden thought of one mind. And this is expressed in the light of true imagination. And true imagination, it's not fantasy. It's not things that we wish were true. It is tapping into something very, very spiritual and very, very enlightening. It's not going to be, oh, I wish I was thinner, or I wish I was, a better writer, or whatever it is that you're thinking. This is true imagination. And it's been sought after for so long by alchemists and Native Americans and even, the 60s generation. While I don't want to say I'm recommending this to anybody, but a lot of alchemists at this stage tried what they called plant allies, and they're hallucinogenic. And that would be like opium, cacao, ayahuasca, peyote, marijuana, psilocybin mushrooms. And they've used these plants in order to gain access to this higher realm. And it is strange because it does seem to have some ability to do that for you. I remember in college, I had a paper due, and I was a terrible procrastinator, not particularly interested in what I was studying, made the wrong choice. But anyway, I had a paper due, and it was due the next day. And I knew it was going to be an all-nighter. So one of my friends had diet pills, and she was like 6'2", maybe 180, 90 pounds, big woman. And she gave me one of her diet pills, which of course was based on her weight and height. Here I am, 5 foot, and so she gave me that and said, "This will help you keep awake." Well, it's speed, you know? And so I took it thinking, oh, it's a diet pill. I'll just be kind of awake and have some life to me and I'll finish this paper up. Well, that was a joke. But I tuned in to this most miracle of knowledge. I don't know. I can't explain it, except I typed like faster than I've ever typed in my life. I never made a mistake. And I was definitely friends with my typing eraser because we didn't have computers then. When I was in college, we just had our typewriter and I was not that great. And I was always erasing and trying to get the words right. And I didn't make one mistake. I finished that paper that night, handed it in. I got my first A in that class. It was absolutely amazing. And yes, I tapped in to something much higher than myself. It was the light of true imagination. I don't think I would ever do that again. But this is the step where a lot of alchemists thought that was the way to go. So they used it. So I've already spoke to this. Be careful not to engage in fantasies or instincts. The fermented person is alive and irrepressible, and their awareness and creativity will skyrocket. And so I've put some people down here that that you can relate to as having tapped into that imagination without the use of drugs, I think. But, you know, Van Gogh, Michelangelo, Monet, Georgia O'Keeffe, Frida, and all of them had challenges in their life. It isn't an easy path by any means to continue this high level. I think that we're going to have it, we'll be working more easily with it as we go through the next steps. There's 2 more steps, and that will help us to not stay in this fermentation stage where we access higher realms of true imagination, but we're still within our human bodies, and there will be challenges. And that's what all of these people experienced. But they did let their creative muse be inspired from true imagination. Okay. All right, and the reference to this stage in the Emerald Tablet is, I got to get this out there. We raise consciousness from the darkness of the body, putrefaction. We separate earth from fire, the subtle from the gross, gently and with great ingenuity. It rises from the earth to heaven and descends again to earth, thereby combining within itself the powers of both the above and the below. And that's right, that's the first, that's the last thing I wanted to bring up. And I did do a properties of fire slide. I'm not going to go through it, from Natural Rhythms, just for any kind of help that you need with journaling or qualities of fire as per Natural Rhythms. And Lisa Michaels, my priestess teacher. Anyway, I will leave that with this presentation for your reference. And I am planning to do some more reference pieces that will just, Sophia Mona Lisa will just add them to the presentation on the repeat, and the exercises. I will do the same. I will write them up and she will add them so that we'll have them, but I'm not going to go through that today in saving some time. Okay, there she is. Fermentation. Go for it.
Let me go on share. Okay, so honest to goodness, that was fabulous.
Okay.
Let me just say regarding the yellow phase, I did look it up because, you know, Carl Jung, who was
Mhm.
also a famous alchemist in addition
Right.
to psychotherapy, spoke to the 4 phases
Mhm.
or stages, which are different than the 7 steps. He does put them in this order: Negretto, Albedo, Citrinitis,
Okay.
which would be the yellow
Yeah.
stage, and the Rubido.
Okay.
It was Gary Caton, through the Hermetica Triptycha, who was aligning those stages with the significant events of the Mercury synodic cycle,
Okay.
that took Citrinitis out and just used Negretto, Albedo, and Rubido. But before I move on, let me just say what I find interesting that came up in this quick Google search related to Carl Jung. In psychological terms, Jung describes Negretto as confession, Albedo as illumination, Citrinitis as education, and Rubido as transformation.
Mm.
So it's interesting to see how he and Gary P. Caton, with 2 different bodies of work, psychotherapy, the Mercury synodic cycle, have used these stages in these unique ways.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to clarify around the fermentation process? Any questions, anything that came into your mind that was a significant aha? Okay. All right, so we'll go back to the slides. Thank you, Maureen. That was really super fantastic. And
Oh,
by
It
thank
the
was
you.
way,
really great.
I love
Thank you.
that image of the Christo Sophia that you found.
Good.
All right, here we go. So now, of course, we transition to these stages related to the Mercury synodic cycle. And remember, and this is why I don't really understand why Gary chose to leave out the yellow stage, because the Mercury synodic cycle has 4 major cosmic aspects. The aspect that he leaves out, if you look down here, is the superior conjunction. So I'm not sure why he chose to leave that out, but these are the ones he includes. And the last one that is related to the Rubido phase, and also in terms of the hero's journey, the return, is this morning elongation. We're getting ready to have a morning elongation, January 12th. 4 days after this gate activation, 3 days after the sacred masculine is reborn from the underworld, completely transfigured. And so you can very likely feel into the fact that all of this is completely, they're all connected, that they're all showing up on the linear timeline, you know, within a 4-day period of each other, is highly momentous. So let's talk about this Rubido stage. So when the morning elongation happens in the Mercury synodic cycle, this is akin to Mercury crossing the threshold of return to the normal world. And of course, that statement is in reference to the hero's journey. We know in the hero's journey, the departure is when the hero leaves the normal world to go into the imaginary world. He has all the challenges and stuff where the initiation is. And then the return as he comes back to the normal world, this enlightened being from all of the things he experienced. So this is what Gary is making this allusion to regarding the morning elongation. We're getting ready to cross that threshold of coming back into the normal world, because remember, all this time, Mercury has been below the horizon in the underworld. The underworld is the, imaginary world, so to speak, in terms of the hero's journey. So undergoing reddening, and of course the reddening is referring to the rubido. And he uses the fire element here. Again, the synchronicities with this gate activation in Sagittarius, the highest frequency of the fire astrological signs happening in the solar plexus, which is identified with the sun and the fire element as well. So all of this coming together, even in terms of this aspect of that is completing this particular Mercury synodic cycle, is just really a mystical manifestation. So undergoing reddening in the fires stimulates the movement of fresh blood into the purified and ensouled matter so that it may become whole and active once again. It is in the rubido stage that we pass from the initial wedding, and that's referring to the Hieros Gamos that took place at the albedo stage, which happened with the Mercury inferior conjunction on the same, basically with less than a degree conjunction to the winter solstice point. So we're passing from this initial wedding to a full-blown working relationship between what Gary calls the white queen, or the queen of the soul, and the red king, or the king of the spirit. The rebus, which is the product, right? You get married, product of the marriage is you have a child. The rebus, which is the product of the rubido, is that the philosopher's child, which is a third consciousness, and I think that's interesting because it ties back, Maureen, to Maria Prophetessa's axiom, right? From the two comes the third, right? And so the child being, or the third consciousness being conceived by the white queen and the red king during the albedo, right? That initiation, that Hieros Gamos, must now be raised to maturity. For this, the flames of the rubido, I love this because it speaks to exactly what you just said, are a gentle, controlled heat, similar to a bird sitting on eggs to hatch them. Very different analogy, but gives you the same understanding and clarity from the analogies that you provided, Maureen. In the rubido, it is time to re-engage the fiery passions toward more worldly goals once again. This means using the fire of inspiration. What did you say? You said inspiration and imagination. Kindled in the soul during albedo to take the action necessary to make the dream a reality. So I love the overlap between what you're teaching from Maria Prophetessa with the 7 steps, and how Gary Caton has taken 3 of the 4 stages that Jung speaks to and aligns them with these significant events of the Mercury synodic cycle. Now, this is the big reveal. I mean, I've revealed it earlier, but maybe it didn't catch your attention. This morning elongation for Mercury is taking place at 29 degrees, the mastery point of Sagittarius, the mastery point of the highest frequency of the fire signs, 29 degrees Sagittarius. This is huge because this is reinforcing the idea that this whole relationship with your seat of power comes back to being able to stand in the truth of who you are. That's Sagittarius. The truth of who you are, your authentic self. And of course, as we go through the alchemical process, as we go through the spiritual journey, we are refining our clarity and understanding around who we, as extensions of Source, really are, which is not at all about the egoic personality self. And so we are being given an opportunity through this morning elongation to perhaps have an illuminating inspiration download around the truth of who we really are, connected with this solar plexus activation, so that we can stand in our power in the truth of who we are. Because think about kids, what do? They give their power away because they got to go with the pack, right? It's not cool to march to the beat of your own drum. You got to do what everybody else is doing. You got to wear what they're wearing. You got to cut your hair the way that they're wearing their hair, right? Use their language, their slang language. That's what's cool. No, this is about being true to yourself and the power coming from marching to the beat of your own drum. Speaking of your soul note in Vega. No wonder we all have our own beat from our own drum, right? So these are the notable aspects I want to bring clearly into your awareness that are going to be happening over this week. The Venus gate activation tomorrow at 12 Sag. The sacred masculine rising from the underworld transfigured the very next day, Tuesday at 3 Capricorn. He's coming in as that elder, as the wise one, as the way shower for how we can be in relationship with the divine masculine. What does that look like? What does that feel like? 2 days later, new moon. I think that's a Thursday in Capricorn. And then this Mercury morning elongation at that mastery point. All 4 of these highly potent and powerful events really are merging their frequencies together. And I don't care if you say, well, these 2 are happening in Sag, and there's a great big, window between 12 degrees and 29 degrees. And these 2 are happening in Capricorn, and there's a great big window between them. But look at this synchronicity. There's 17 degrees between 12 and 29. There's 17 degrees between 3 and 20. And we know what a lot of people speak to regarding that magic number 17. This is a synchronicity because this Mercury morning elongation completes this synodic cycle, which completes the Mercury Earth elemental year. Now we're going into the Mercury fire elemental year. While we are in the Leo goddess journey, which is a fire element, there is a lot of, let me just say, intricacies at play through all of this. And the deeper you dive into it, the more ahas you'll have around it. So let me just stop the share here and give everybody an opportunity to reflect, share, clarify, anything we want to say about what's happening with the Mercury elongation in this rubido stage. Nicole, anything pricking you that needs to be focused on around that piece?
No, I think that it speaks for itself in a lot of ways, and moving into fire after fire, the purification, is really going to start to ignite in people. And I think you're really going to start to see in yourself, looking back at the work you're doing, these changes that are developing as you go through this process. I think it's really going to become very, very clear and where you're going and what you're working on and how we're doing this.
Yeah.
I think it's a good cycle.
Yes, and as you said, fire and fire. What happens is when fire meets fire, the momentum rapidly escalates. So as Betty Davis once famously said, buckle up, darling, it's going to be a bumpy ride. But it may be a fun ride. I mean, think about how fun it is when the roller coaster's coming down that big hill. Woo! That's fun. So you get to choose how you want to experience it. Anything else on that piece? Okay, let me share the screen. Now, in terms of the experiential piece, we are over here now to, this is the solar plexus. Is that, yeah. And you're invited to watch The Order of the Phoenix, which is the next movie in the series, to discern, practice discerning the departure, the initiation, and the return. And having said that, that brings us back to the Goblet of Fire. And let me just say that I had a conversation with someone who shared with me that she wasn't able to watch this and she's not going to participate in this exercise because the frequencies of this movie are very disruptive to her nervous system. And initially thought, well, I need to do some more healing on my nervous system. And as we discussed it, I suggested possibly it's not a healing that needs to take place. Maybe a healing has taken place and your nervous system is just at a higher frequency than what's coming through the movie. And so, you know, I would describe that like fingernails on a chalkboard, like, oh, I can't watch that, but she could describe it her own way. So I know Maureen and I agreed that the Harry Potter series is a really great embodiment of the hero's journey, the departure, the initiation, and return. But I also know this. I also know that Maureen and I discovered that the hero's journey as a template was no longer relevant for the sacred masculine. And I don't remember the year that the last novel was published in the Harry Potter series. But whatever that year was, and Maureen can probably tell us, from that year till now, it's clear to me that a lot has transpired. And especially for us in this group that have been working through this project, our frequencies have been raised significantly. So what I want to do before we go into those that did watch it and picked out the departure, return, and the initiation is I want to stop the share, have a little conversation about this phenomenon and just put it out to you all. How do you all feel? You know, it was something that Maureen and I thought would be fun for you to engage in to help you understand the departure, the initiation, and return. And maybe like with the sacred masculine and the hero's journey no longer being a relevant template, maybe the Harry Potter movie series isn't relevant for us anymore. Maybe there's something else out there that you could engage in terms of the departure, initiation, and return that may feel more relevant and at a frequency that's more coherent with where we are. So unmute yourselves and just chime in. I'm just opening the space for the conversation.
I myself don't watch TV at all. And it takes a lot for me to sit down and watch the movie. And I actually did this time sit down and watch the movie. I've seen it in the past with my daughter a long, long time ago. But I think it has lessons in it. And if you can endure sitting down and watching it, it kind of has the same effect for me, though. I get uncomfortable when watching anything. The frequencies are not pleasurable to me. And so that's just something that I want to put out there. I don't mind doing it. And if it's once a month, I'll watch a movie once a month. But I really don't watch TV or have it on at all in my house. And so for me, it takes a lot to engage in watching a movie.
And I want to validate that for you and the person that brought this into my awareness, because I myself am aware that I'm watching less and less television, and some of my old standby programs that I would go to just for entertainment purposes, I have lost interest in it. I'll put it on for 10-20 minutes and it's like, eh, because again, they're just no longer coherent. And the problem that I perceive with that medium is definitely controlled by the deep state. And so there's very likely not much out there except for maybe some independent filmmakers or documentarians that's going to be at a frequency that we could resonate with, and likely not even relevant to this body of study. There may be, I just don't know. And if somebody knows, please share it with me. So I just want to validate what we're becoming aware of, what we are discerning as we're going through this journey. So Maureen, let me ask you, how are you feeling around this in terms of the frequencies of it? And are you aware of anything else that we could replace this with?
No, I'm not. I mean, the only other one I know of that I can think of is the Lord of the Rings. It is a set of books, but it's much more than that. It's a journey to self. That's what it is. Both characters, Frodo and Harry, are on a journey to themselves. Mm-hmm. And that is how I have always seen it. I went through this with her. I was from the beginning, and I went through the journey with J.K. Rowling as she wrote it. And so it was such a big part of my life because I was on the road so much. My mother had Alzheimer's, and I was driving to take care of her all the time. And so I was on the road 3 and 4 times a week. She wouldn't move out of her place, so I just went there. And I played over and over again, wherever in the journey we were with J.K. Rowling. I read the books, I saw the movies, I listened to the readings. It was so much a part of my life that I learned a great deal from it. But I do know that, like the next movie, The Order of the Phoenix, Harry has to engage with his solar plexus, his personal power, true imagination, which fails him. To me, there's just so much there, but I get it. A lot of people they don't want to sit through the movies, not necessarily because they see evil in it, but it just doesn't resonate with them. And that is fine. We don't have to do that. It's already a part of my life. But I think the important part is to recognize when we ourselves enter an initiation, that we ourselves can tell when we hit the point of departure, or when that initiation begins, and when we are complete. I think that may be what we really want to get from this. is our own journey to self. And so yeah, that's just what I have to say. I certainly wouldn't be offended at all if we didn't do that.
And I agree with you, which is why, just a second, Karen, I'll pass it over to you. I agree with it is about the discernment of these stages in our own journey to ourself, and really even pieces of ourself. And that's why we wanted you guys to be able to practice discerning where it was happening in the movie, even though, as you can clearly see from the past gatherings, that Maureen and I have more often than not picked different points, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So any ideas for how to replace this? But first, let's hear from Karen.
Thank you. I started watching it and became aware of how I was feeling in my body, the energy in my body. It felt very familiar. And then it dawned on me, that's the vibration I've been living in for decades. And as many of you know, I recently changed my living situation. And I now have my own space. And it felt like an assault to my nervous system to sit in that energy as I was receiving it. It may not affect everybody the same way, but I just turned it off and I said, I'm not doing this. I am not going to put myself in that environment and that energy again. I'm done. And I haven't yet learned, my nervous system felt raw. And I haven't yet learned how to manage, if I find myself in that kind of environment, how to do what you said earlier, Nicole, about how to maintain your center without letting the external affect you. I haven't learned how to do that yet. And so I personally don't want to do it. I would rather us take personal experiences and look at, okay, what stage is this? What's one thing that happened this month? And how do I move through that process personally? So there you go. That's it.
I think it's a good idea, because what I'm aware of, like with this initiation that I just had at the solar plexus, this is regarding something that I've been dealing with my entire life. But if I look at it from the 3 stages, what I can see is, while it was an initiation of my solar plexus chakra because this gate's being activated, I could see that for me, it was a return stage. And remember what I told you, Karen? Give me a big gold star, because I feel like I nailed this one. And so I can look back and I can see, okay, yes, this ties back to this when that was the departure, that when this was the initiation. And I'm aware that this that I experienced now was the return phase. And I think that that level of clarity around whatever's coming up in your life, that's like the big thing of the month, is very empowering, particularly because we are working with the alchemical steps of these chakras. And so the one big thing that comes up for you may be a departure, it may be an initiation, it may be a return. You've got to discern that. And then will you take it a step further and say, oh, if it is a return, ooh, I see where it was initiated, I see where the departure happened, or whatever it may be. If it's a departure, well, then that's that. You don't know where it's going yet. But anyhow, I like the idea. Maureen, how do you feel about that idea?
Well, let me say first, I don't mind if everybody wants to do that. I really don't mind. I just personally probably won't participate in the discussion part. So go ahead.
Okay, so what was your question?
My question is, how do you feel about maybe taking a big event that happened in the month and working with the departure, initiation, return from that perspective, in lieu of Harry Potter? And then I think we should just kind of take a vote. Do we stick with the Harry Potter, or do we do this new thing?
Yeah, that's fine with me. What you're suggesting is fine. I've already said Harry Potter is a part of me. It is a
Mhm.
big part of me. I was with it for 10 years. And so I went through every initiation and every return and everything. I mean, it just fit my life at that point, and I was able to really understand, what I was experiencing through watching this young man grow. It doesn't matter, I mean, that's just me. It's just a part of me, and it always will be. And I can do this any way you guys want to. It's
Yeah, and I love how you say it fit my life at that point.
Mhm.
And my sense that what I'm hearing from Karen is it's not fitting her life at this.
Mhm.
And so I like to try to keep it cohesive, every inclusive. So Kimberly and Nicole, what do you think? Do we stick with Harry Potter or do we do the personal experience?
I
For
like,
me,
oh,
oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead.
I like the idea of the personal experience at this time because it's always available, right? Harry Potter was very popular when I was raising my kids, and we got all caught up in the excitement. I loved Harry Potter. I've not had a chance to sit down and watch any of the movies. Um, but as we're talking now, and with what Karen shared, I'm able to see like something that happened at the throat chakra and where that is in the alchemical process. Again, something at the heart. And so I think it's just to reiterate, it's something that's always available to us. So it's not something we have to go look for outside of us or sit down and do, quote, do. Yeah, I like the idea. I'm not opposed to watching Harry Potter. I just haven't been able to do it yet, or taken the time, I should say. So I'm good either way. I like the idea, but I'm not opposed to watching Harry, to trying to sit down and watch it again.
And how about you, Nicole?
For me, I think the experience will speak truer to your process. And while Harry Potter is great, and I do love and have loved the series, I think to be authentic in this process, to be mindful in your month, to find your initiation process and to be consciously aware of it, writing it down, and the notes on what you're aware of, what you're going through, and how it's all affecting you, would be more beneficial to the process than to try to find symbology in a movie, right? If you're taking from real life experience, it's an impact on your immediate presence. Relating to external things in this process is going to become more and more difficult because when you're coming from a place of sovereignty and internalness, exterior things don't impact you as much as your own process and experience. And I think it speaks truer to this process, if that makes sense.
Honestly, I love the way that you presented that because it feels very coherent with what we're doing. Very coherent with what we're doing. So if everybody's okay with that and will commit to being aware of a big thing that happened. Oh, this big thing happened. It may not be initiation. It may be an initiation. It may be a departure. It may be a return. But if you're going to commit to this big thing happened, this is what I'm aware of in terms of these 3 stages. And well, as I said, if it is an initiation, to be able to try to find the departure port. If it is a return, be able to find the departure and the initiation. I think it'll be very empowering. And the other thing I'm going to warn you about right now, Maureen knows this. Nicole knows this. This is going to require you to step into a deep space of vulnerability because it's so personal.
Mhm.
And so are you ready to sign up for that level of transparency?
That's the other thing I want to say too is you don't have to share all the details, right? And you don't even have to be aware of where you're at in the process. Bring an experience that you experienced during the month, share it with others, and then open it up to what is everybody else's insight about your telling of that story, because then that gives you a different, broader perspective of what's happening, and it may open up some insight within you. You don't have to go into the nitty-gritty details, but if you can bring an experience and share it with everyone else, I think it's going to open you up to new perspectives and maybe some new changes within you about whatever it is you're working through in this moment.
I like it.
Well, and then that allows you to be as vulnerable as you feel safe to be.
Absolutely.
And I am going to just acknowledge that there are some people in our tribe that are not safe being vulnerable at all. So, you know, they're going to have to navigate how much they can engage that process for themselves and stay safe. But
And
that's
if they don't feel like sharing, we can honor that in them too.
yes, and that's all about this new relationship with your seat of your personal power, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, is everybody good with that choice?
Thank you. Yes.
A thumbs up or a yes would help.
Sorry, yes.
Okay. I mean, I do get a lot of messages from out there, but so far I'm not mastered mind reading.
Did you see that on my video? When I did 2 thumbs up, fireworks went off behind me.
No,
Oh my gosh, it did.
Look at that.
and to me, what is that setting?
There
Oh,
it goes.
It did it for me too.
I don't get it.
what is that setting?
I have no idea.
We have to
I
find
don't know. Double good? I don't know.
We have to find out. That's
Fire on
Try
fire.
it again, Maureen, and hold them up close to the camera.
I don't get fireworks. That's
we gotta figure that out because that's pretty groovy. I want
Yeah.
that is.
Thanks for bringing that into our awareness.
Hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the slide, and for those that did it for the Goblet of Fire, if you want to share what you discerned, feel free to. Maureen and I have discussed this. Of course, we both came up with 2 different things. Maureen, you want to start?
Okay. Am I on mute? I'm okay. No, I'm not on
We
mute.
can hear you.
Okay. This is the one where Harry goes to the Triwizard tournament. So I picked as the departure. He used a portkey, which is a magical, a normal everyday item, which has magical powers to transport you. It is a portal. So when you touch it, it takes you right where you want to go. And so Harry used the portkey for the first time with his adopted family, and he went to the Triwizard Cup, and it was a whole new experience. And so that was the departure for him, in my opinion. The initiation was when the dark forces, the all of the people of supporting evil walked through the camp setting fire to everything, and he saw a man put the dark mark in the sky. That was, to me, the beginning of the initiation. It's the first time he'd seen anyone do that. He heard them do that. He saw them do that. And then he began experiencing some very unpleasant things. This was a very difficult time for Harry. And the return, in my opinion, was let's see, what did I say? He, you know, I think it's that when he's sitting in the final, the feast they always have at the end of the year, he's sitting in the Great Hall, and he's flanked by his two best friends, his allies who never leave him. Hermione and Ron are sitting on each side of him, and he looks very, very drained. I mean, you can see he's gone through something very, very terrible. And Dumbledore is talking about what has happened, and they are honoring Cedric Diggory. They are honoring him, and also he is telling them what they are about to face, that Voldemort has returned. And so that was the return, and then from then on, everything changes, everything. So.
So for myself, I almost went with the port key as the departure, but I realized that everything around this competition that was happening, where the name comes out of the Goblet of Fire, everything that was transpiring from beginning to end was really about Voldemort's attempts to signal what do they call them, Death Eaters, the people that follow him.
That's it.
Signal the Death Eaters that he's back, and to vanquish Harry Potter. Everything was about that happening. So when I realized that, I let go of the port key as the departure, and of course it is another port key that takes him to the cemetery where Voldemort is. So what I used as the departure was when that Death Eater activated the mark on his forearm, which they call that mark. Hold on a second. The dark mark. When he activated the dark mark that had been kind of tattooed on his arm, he activated with his wand. Then the dark mark showed up in the sky. That was a huge signal to all of the wizarding world, and especially the Death Eaters, that Voldemort was back. So I considered that the departure. Then for the initiation, after he and Cedric are taken to that cemetery through the port key of the cup, what happens is there's a point where Harry is like cowering behind this tombstone, and Voldemort is really kind of what is the word? Can't find the word. I'm sorry. He's like heckling him, so to speak, trying to get him to engage. Yeah. And so Harry like pulls himself together, and he steps out from behind the gravestone to confront Voldemort, and their wands meet. And when their wands meet, there's this huge light bubble that shows up around them. And in that light bubble, Harry's parents show up, and Cedric Diggory shows up. And the parents are coaching him on what to do to get to the port key and to get to safety. And Cedric is telling him, please take my body back with you with the port key to my father. So to me, that whole scene where, I mean, because he's cowering behind that gravestone, he knows that Voldemort is there to kill him, and he feels that death is imminent. And then something in him switches, and he comes out in his power, and those wands meet. Boom. To me, that was the initiation. And then for me, the return was, and I think it might have been after that feast that you're talking about, Maureen. Harry is up in his dormitory room, and Dumbledore comes in, and Harry tells Dumbledore about that scene, about how the wands connected and what happened. And Dumbledore says the words priori incantatem. I don't know what that phrase made, but he uses that phrase about what happened at what I think is the initiation. And then he tells Harry, and I wrote this down, dark and difficult times lie ahead, but remember this, you have friends here. You are not alone. For me, that was the return, because so much of the challenges that Harry faces, he does feel like he's alone in facing Voldemort. And so to come back to this safe space, which is obviously Hogwarts, to come back to this safe elder, which is obviously Dumbledore, and for Dumbledore to remind him, you are not alone, you have friends here. For me, that was the return.
Yeah. I get that. And you know that priori incantatem, that's interesting to me because something just came up about it. Their wands are brothers.
That's right. They got
and Harry didn't know that.
They don't know it at this point, that they're
Uh-uh.
made from wings of the same phoenix.
Of the same phoenix, and it's Dumbledore's phoenix. Gave 2 feathers for wands.
Oh, I never got that piece.
It was Fawkes. It was Fawkes.
Which is why
And-
Fawkes came to him, not only because
Right.
he showed loyalty to,
Mhm.
but because I never got that piece.
Yeah. So the wands are programmed. They can't kill each other, so they just meet in the middle and create this resistance. So it's almost like Voldemort and Harry are 2 sides of the same coin. And Harry's choices versus Voldemort's choices are what separates them. Because we know the wands choose the wizard,
Right.
and
Yeah.
the wands chose Voldemort, who is Tom Riddle at that point, and Harry.
And isn't it interesting that they both basically started their lives the same as orphans?
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yes.
I have a different take on the whole thing.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So the departure for me was when Harry's name came out of the cup and he wasn't
Mhm.
expecting that.
Mm-hmm.
That was the departure for me.
Mm-hmm.
The initiation for me was he lost his friends in the beginning and felt very alone as he starts to face these trials. And in these trials, he has to go within himself and say, what do I believe? What do I want to do? And really that speaks to when they're in the maze before they go into the cemetery and meet Voldemort, that him and Cedric are there, and Cedric's, being taken, and Harry stops for a minute and is like, what am I going to do in this moment? Am I going to stay true to myself and save him? Or am I going to be selfish and go after that cup? Right? That internal struggle shows the initiation process of him battling himself. What am I going to choose in this moment? Where am I going with my life? What's going to happen now? And him making that choice and taking Cedric with him and them both touching the cup at the same time takes you into the battle, right? Where he's cowering behind the headstone and he really doesn't want to face Voldemort. But that's the return for me when he summons that internal power and he knows he's the only person who can fight Voldemort, right? He's the only person that can do this. And so he comes and he faces it and is helped because he makes the right choices. It shows the duality of life, right? You have the dark and you have the light. Where are you going to choose? Constantly in our lives, in this realm, it's a duality. Where are we going? What are we doing? And we base our self, our own personas on our choices. And Harry choosing to do the right thing and Voldemort always choosing to do the wrong thing clearly shows you the contrast in the world. And your choices determine where you're going to live in it. And so that was the return for me. So
I totally get that. That's beautiful, Nicole.
mhm.
Yeah. And so we can see how, based on all of our own experiences and who we are, how we can land in different places on all of it. And it's all valid. And yeah, that was really, really a powerful piece that you picked out there. Yeah. It's funny that both you and Maureen spoke to this kind of two peas in a pod situation, and one choosing the high road and one choosing the low road, because quite frankly, in my own life, I have this situation with my birth father. My birth father and my mother, their divorce was signed and legal the day before my first birthday. And yet he was always like in the background, right? Threatening my mother in terms of coming in to see me, yada, yada, yada. Well, the truth of the matter is, everybody will tell you I am the spitting image of my birth father. And of all his other kids, I'm the one that looks the most like him. And we are literally that two peas in the same pod. And yet he made bad choice after bad choice after bad choice, ended up getting killed. They ruled it an accident by a gunshot wound. I am convinced it was a murder. And then, of course, I went the other way. And I've always been aware of that through my life, how fascinating it is to see this contrast between where he chose to go, knowing what he could have been and done, as opposed to where my life trajectory went. So it's fascinating that this theme comes up, and it's so personal for me.
It clearly shows the contrast in your decision space. Everyone has a decision space. And based on how you feel and what your perception of yourself is, determines your choices. And so if you feel badly about yourself, or if you feel like you have no other options and you feel forced, you sometimes make poor decisions. And as you start to come out of that decision space and realize that you do have all the options, you make different choices.
Yeah.
And some people are just not in a space to realize that they have options.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Anybody have anything else to say regarding that piece? Okay. Well, let's quickly conclude this gathering with these last couple of slides. I think, have we all okay with questions and answers? If anybody has a question, please quickly speak up. Okay. I like to provide a lot of opportunity. So the next activation is going to happen on February 7th. That's going to be at the sacral chakra. That's known as the portal of creation. We will be activating the 19th strand of DNA, and we will be having our ceremony the Sunday following the 7th. So it's going to be on the 11th. So just keep that in mind. And then we just want to thank everybody who's watching the replay for showing up for this and being present with us. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here, but if the rest of you could just stay on with me, I'd appreciate it. So for everybody else, until next month, we'll see you the next time. Bye-bye.